Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I would like to call to order the special meeting of the CRA. Today is December 16th, 2019, and the time is 4:02 p.m. And before, we don't have commission comments, okay. All right, let's head right into the agenda. Item 2, resolution number 19-48, approving a grant to Rosemary WPB LLC in an amount not to exceed $9 million for the development of 289-unit multifamily mixed-income development in the historic Northwest, and an agreement to provide 50% of TIF revenues generated for the project for 13 years in an amount not to exceed $5 million.
Good afternoon, Mayor Commissioners. Today we're going to have a presentation from Affiliated Development. I'm going to walk through a couple slides, and then I'm going to have Jennifer Ferriel from Housing and Community Development come up and talk from the HCD side briefly, because you have a companion item on the City Commission agenda. So first, the project location that we're speaking of is on Rosemary Avenue between 2nd and 3rd Street. This is an outline of the properties that Affiliated Development owns and would like to develop. And I just briefly want to go through the terms of the CRA. What they're asking of the CRA is a $9 million grant. This is a not to exceed amount. The final grant will be determined with a verified gap analysis, depending on if the project happens to change through the development process. The $9 million grant is payable at financial closing, which will be no sooner than October 1st, 2020. The amount will be placed in escrow and drawn with construction. So just like the bank loans will be drawn down, this will be drawn down along with the bank loans as well. And the grant is tied to the gap due to the rent restrictions that the developer is placing on themselves. They're also requesting a 50% TIF repayable annually over 13 years. The way this works is it's 50% of the tax increment that's produced from this project. It's after project completion and after the taxes are paid. The CRA reimburses 50% of the tax increment that this agency receives. The amount is not to exceed $5 million. So currently it's estimated that the project will generate approximately $400,000 annually, 50% of it, so a total of $800,000 to this agency annually. And the restrictions on this is there's a 15-year affordability period, and again, HCD will talk a little bit to this, but there are restrictions on the rent for 15 years. And finally, a payback provision. In the event of a restricted transfer of the property, meaning the developers sell before the allotted time that we've agreed upon, they will pay back $6 million if it occurs after financial closing but before the property is stabilized. And they will repay $3 million if the transfer occurs within 24 months of stabilization. And this just ensures that the developers maintain an interest until the property is stabilized and fully functioning, that our funding has been utilized efficiently. So that is all I have. Jennifer, if you want to come up, I will, before the developer comes up, this is a project that staff supports. We've worked with the developer on this. We believe that with all the investments that the CRA is making within the historic Northwest, this is a private developer project that we're very excited about, and looking forward to hearing from them.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Commissioners, CRA board members. Jennifer Ferriel, Director of Housing and Community Development. Before the developer proceeds with their presentation, I want to talk a little bit about the need for workforce housing in our city. But before we even go there, I want to talk about the difference between affordable and workforce housing. Oftentimes, we talk about these terms and we think they're interchangeable, but in essence, they're not. So what is affordable housing? Affordable housing is any housing that is affordable to households or individuals whose income is less than 80% of the area median income as defined by HUD. Oftentimes, our affordable housing projects are subsidized with either a housing tax credit deal or some sort of HUD funding or some other subsidy that supports affordable housing development. Workforce, on the other hand, is housing that is between 80 and 140% of the AMI. All of our workforce housing projects, other than SHIP funding, which is very limited, and the Sadowski funds have been swept, there is no federal or state funding source that supports the development of workforce housing. And workforce housing, it's geared towards our teachers or firefighters, and in essence, it's addressing what we call that missing middle. And that missing middle that they make too much money to qualify for any affordable housing project, but then market rate housing, it's extremely expensive. I will state that 60% of the households in South Florida are paying more than 30% of their income on rent. The standard is that individuals shouldn't pay, or households shouldn't pay, more than 30 or 35% of their income on rent. So what does that look like in terms of the numbers? Affordable housing, again, under 80% of the AMI, and that's incomes between, for a household size of one, between $17,000 and $46,000 a year. And the rents start at around $440 per month. How it's calculated is that they'll look at your income and they'll take what's 30% of your income. So that's why if you're making $17,000 a year, you can afford $440,000 a month in rent. If on the workforce side, in essence, if you're making, let's say for a household size of two, if you're making $53,000 a year, your rents start about $1,100 a month. And that's because, again, that doesn't exceed an average 30% of that individual's household income. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've done in the city to address our affordable housing needs. Again, we have multiple federal and state funding programs that support the development of affordable rental housing. In rental housing alone, we have about 46 developments citywide consisting of 6,200 units that are designated for incomes of 80% AMI or less, which means that the rents are also restricted. And this is for rental housing only, and this is supported by low-income housing tax credit, any HUD funding, or any sale funding, or any other sorts of funding sources that support affordable housing. We also have an additional units that are under construction. We have Flagler Station, which is on the corner of Banyan and Tamarind. That's 94 units under development. Georgian Gardens, we have a groundbreaking scheduled for January 2020. That's 87 additional units. Dr. Alice Moore Apartments, another 26 units. Also, we have our Section 8 housing vouchers or tenant-based rental assistance, whereas the West Palm Beach and both Palm Beach County Housing Authority, they do address countywide. There are over 5,000 housing choice vouchers, and a large majority of those are for individuals who live in West Palm Beach. And of course, we have our countywide HOPWA program, and that's another $3.1 million annually. So as you can see, our affordable housing needs, because there are more resources, we do have, there is some sort of, there is a magnitude in terms of what's being provided to address these needs. Workforce housing, on the other hand, because there is no other subsidy available, it's really been up to us as a city government to really incentivize workforce. So what projects have we done that? Arts on Broadway, that's 17 units of workforce housing only. The Macy's site, that's only 56 units of workforce housing. Districts Flats, that's another 36 units of workforce housing. So when you compare that to how we're addressing our affordable housing needs, you can see that there's a much need for workforce in terms of what the grant would be able to provide. So who would be eligible for workforce housing? I did a little bit of research today, and I learned that as of April of last year, only 27% of City of West Palm Beach employees live in West Palm Beach. And that's because the cost of living is fairly expensive, and they do have to drive to locations as far as Port St. Lucie in order to find housing, rental housing that is, of course, affordable and cheaper. So just to give you a perspective, a Palm Beach County school psychologist, the starting salary is at $49,000. They would qualify under a workforce housing deal, and their rents would start at about $1,100 a month. A West Palm Beach police officer, the starting rate for a West Palm Beach officer is $49,964. They would qualify under this program and would be able to occupy these workforce housing units. Again, the rent starting at similar rent levels. A West Palm Beach employee, and this is the average for citywide, excluding city commission and police and fire, the average salary is $60,000 a year. They would be able to qualify under this workforce housing program, and they would the starting monthly rents would be at approximately $1,400 a month. And you see that in all of these instances, the percentage of the person's annual salary does not exceed 30% of their annual income. So with that said, I will have the developers come up and talk about the specific project.
Before you
Yes.
step down, Commissioner Neri?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Really quick, thank you, Jennifer, for your
Yes.
presentation. So you have said that under this program, both Palm Beach County School, West Palm Beach police officer, and the mid-level position would qualify. That's at 80% of AMI. What we're talking about today, and I we'll hear from the developers, but they're starting at 100%, correct?
It's up to 100. So we could have some 80s, we could even have some 60s. It's up to 100% of the AMI.
Okay.
The goal is to indicate it, leave it up to 100 so we have flexibility. So if, let's say we had, all of the folks that came in at 80 and then we didn't have any availability for other income levels, that there would be flexibility in terms of who they'd be able to accept. But it's up to, it's not just, it's not starting at, it's up to.
So we're, Mayor?
Yes.
So we're talking 80 to 140%
Correct.
AMI?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes my presentation, and I'll just finalize it with saying that supporting public-private partnerships for the development of workforce and affordable housing is a priority of the city, and H-City Housing and Community Development is in support of this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
My name is Jeff Burns with Affiliated Development. First off, I'd like to thank the Mayor, City Commission, CRA Board for the consideration of this proposal. I also want to thank the residents that have taken the time out of their busy days to come and be a part of this process and hopefully voice their support. By way of intro, Affiliated Development is a mission-based development company that specializes in public-private partnerships. This is what we do. When Nick and I formed the company, we decided that we would only pursue development if the project satisfied two things. The first, we want to leave the community better than we found it, and the second, we want to address housing. With that said, it is very important that we draw a distinction between a group that is proposing a high-rise office tower with rents that are targeting Fortune 500 companies, and a developer that's proposing a high-rise condominium that's going to be tailored to millionaires. That's not what we do. It's great, it fulfills a purpose, but it's not what we do. Our business model is to partner with cities and make substantial private investments into underserved communities traditionally passed up by most developers. In contemplating this project, we literally pulled the pages from the city's economic development study, HCD's housing initiatives, and the downtown city center CRA plan, etc. We're proposing a project that falls within the CRA's Northwest target area, historically a district that has seen very little private investment. Our project stands to address the following city and CRA initiatives. The elimination of slum and blight. We're taking a vacant piece of property with code violations and looking to spend $71 million to improve the property. Adding to the property tax revenue generation. Currently, we pay $15,000 a year on that property, and once the project is complete, it's going to be northward of $850,000. Furthering the objectives and past CRA investment within the Northwest target area. Such as the Sunset Lounge. Hopefully, we're going to be providing some housing and some disposable incomes for folks that can participate in that project. We're talking about delivering approximately $8.5 million of local spending into the Northwest target area that would otherwise not be here. Following the intent of the Stolen Lee report, one of the reports that we got our hands on early, it was good for us. It was published some 18 years ago. The project sits at the hinge block of this report, which is considered to be the most densely populated area within the report. And then, of course, housing. Jennifer touched on it. We're meeting these requirements. This project has the ability to move the needle in a very big way. We're talking about hundreds of lives that will be impacted, and West Palm Beach has the opportunities to set an example for other cities and be at the forefront of tackling the affordable housing crisis in this city. So I'm going to move on with the presentation here. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the project. The grant is a mixed-use, mixed-income workforce housing development project proposed to have 289 units and 5,000 square feet of street-level retail space, a standalone parking garage, and a multifamily structure that starts at 8 stories and cascades on down. We talked about it, but the project is meant to offer Class A living at attainable rents. The amenities that we're proposing to have in this project are consistent with what you would see in any other development within downtown West Palm Beach, the Broadstone, the Parkline, some of these beautiful projects. That's what we're talking about delivering on this project. The property, so as they touched on it, we have 18 different parcels, 15 different land sellers. This was not an easy deal to take down. None of the property owners were residents. All of them were investors that lived in other cities. That was also difficult. It's also important to say that we are not displacing anybody. There's not currently one residence on this property. It is all vacant. There's trash, there's code violations, no residential uses. We had to spend a lot of money cleaning this up. The Grand Theater. The reason we named the project the Grand is to pay homage to the Grand Theater, which was situated, kind of catty corner from this particular site. We're going to actually, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, but we're going to be working closely to make sure that we celebrate this and providing different art that's going to be throughout the building. We also have a proposal to place the Cracker Johnson plaque, which is currently embedded within the sidewalk up prominently placed on the building's facade. The project is meant to draw the eye. So one of the things that's important to us is that residents that may be frequenting certain establishments further south are going to be drawn in to this area. Rosemary has an active and live history, and we want to play to that. So one of the things we've done within the architectural features is make sure that we have a light feature that draws the eye and hopefully brings people down the corridor to experience some of the retail that we're going to have on the ground floor. It's important for us that on the ground floor that we have active uses, daytime and nighttime active uses. We need lights on and people moving around. That's how we're going to be successful over here. To walk you through how the building currently sits on the site, we wanted to put most of our density in the middle of the site. This was done intentionally to provide as enjoyable of a walkable experience along 3rd and along 2nd as possible. On 2nd, we've put our courtyard spaces. One's going to be a pool area. The other is envisioned to be an outdoor movie theater, so kind of playing to the Grand Theater. We wanted to have an outdoor movie theater where we would have a projector screen, and folks that maybe in other parts of the building, or certainly folks that are situated within this portion of the building, can grab a glass of wine, go out on the balcony, and watch a movie. This is a view from Cityside Suites, so 3rd and Rosemary. One of the other things we wanted to do was draw people off the street. Not people. We wanted to draw cars off the street. If anybody's been up and down 3rd, it can be a very, very busy street, especially in the morning and at night. Obviously, that's when a lot of our workforce is coming or leaving. So we wanted to bring people off the street and have a nice area. The buildings out front are meant to be commercial spaces to, again, activate the street front and lights on and boots on the ground. This is a view of our pool area. So again, highly amenitized project. The whole point, and I'll get into this in the next slide, but the whole point of this project is to make sure that everybody benefits from the same amenities, the same quality of finish, and nobody knows who makes what. We're trying to destigmatize affordable housing or workforce housing. So I think Jennifer did a terrific job, so I'm not going to cover all of it. We know who's going to be target residents here. And so with that, I'm going to just kind of skip on through this slide. We talked a little bit earlier, actually, when I opened about meeting some of these initiatives of the city and of the CRA, and so these are just some of them. We wanted to make sure that we address these various items within our proposal, and I believe that we've done that. So this obviously a project of this magnitude. We're talking about a $71 million project. 86% of the project will be privately funded. So that is the majority of this project is a private investment. That's significant. Housing opportunities. Mixed income is meant to be all inclusionary. So the old way of doing housing is basically you take a bunch of people that meet a certain income requirement and you put them in one building. And everybody that lives in that building makes right around the same amount of money. And we don't think that's right. That stigmatizes a building, and basically it segregates people based upon their income status. The purpose of this project is again, to have people that make varying incomes living under one roof, benefiting from the same things. First look. This is important to us. We want to make sure, especially as we started to do a lot of the community outreach, that we were providing an opportunity for current residents to have a first right, essentially, to live in this building. A lot of these properties that are around here, and we did a database of a number of rental properties that are around here, they're getting $1,100, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 a month in rent. They don't have any amenities. It's substandard. Some of them aren't to code. And so we believe that we're going to be able to offer very nice living alternatives for people that are currently residing in this area. One of the other important things for us is that we're going to be offering this first look to first responders, such as police officers and firefighters, as well as teachers. And again, I can go into that. There's a process. It's part of our development agreement that we're gonna be signing that talks very specifically about how we market and how we go about providing this first look. One of the other big things is retail. So we're currently about 60% complete on a very similar project in downtown Fort Lauderdale called the 613. We actually are offering about 5,000 square feet of commercial space along there. One thing we learned kind of the hard way and when we were marketing the space was if you're a small business and you're getting ready to start out, you can't afford 5,000 square feet. And so what we started doing on that project is carving up our retail space to make sure that we're providing people with the option to have a great space with commercial frontage and being able to offer it at an attainable rent. So we're dividing it up into smaller spaces. We actually have commercial retail space in this project that's going to be 650 square feet. That to me is I think going to be a huge advantage to us. I believe we're going to be able to pull in a lot of local small businesses, which is what we want. We believe that people are craving culture in this city, and that they're looking to go out and go to the different restaurants and places that are going to be unique to West Palm Beach. So that's one of the strategies that we're putting on for our retail space. Local spending, I touched on it earlier. So our average renter household spends $30,000 a year in local spending. So people that live in urban areas do not get in their cars and drive 30 minutes to the grocery store, right? They like to walk out their front door, go to the coffee shop, go to the gym, go to the restaurants, go to the bar, wherever it is that they like to do. And so it's going to be a huge shot in the arm for this community. I think the local spending is going to surpass that of what typical construction spending would be. We talked about it. What an opportunity to be able to capture a lot of our workforce. All you have to do is stand on 3rd and Rosemary at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day and watch all the cars go in and leave. And a lot of our outreach, we've met with several residents that are commuting to Port St. Lucie, right? So it's an opportunity to be able to bring people into the city. They work in the city and they can stay here. They can afford to live here. It's also an opportunity from an economic development standpoint to capture their incomes. These are people with disposable incomes. And so they're going to go spend it in some of these other communities. We'd rather them spend it here. One of the big things that we're hoping that we can accomplish with this project, and I think it goes a lot to our business model, is we're hoping to catalyze other investment. We have failed, I believe, if we build this project and nothing else happens around us. We're talking about making a $61 million private investment here, so we need other private investment to occur. This is obviously important to us. There's other proposed projects that are sitting there, currently not doing anything. We hope, and we've been successful in the past on some of our other projects, kind of being the catalyst to help spur additional development and investment within the communities that we invest in. We talked about safety. One of the big things that that we heard from a lot of the community residents was safety. So we have 24-hour security. We've got cameras everywhere. And one of the best things that we can do from a security standpoint is put people on the ground. As I had mentioned earlier, one of the purposes of this commercial space is to make sure that we have lights on the ground floor and people moving around. That's what we want. If somebody's doing something unwanted, they're not going to do it in front of a bunch of people. Construction job opportunities. So we're proposing to host 3 different job fairs within the community, within the Northwest Target area. This is something we've done in the past and other projects. We've actually done it when we haven't been required to. We feel like it's the right thing to do, and we want to be able to offer local businesses and residents an opportunity to be a part of this project. Permanent job opportunities. We're going to include a language within our lease that requires our retail tenants to utilize best efforts when locally hiring or hiring locally. So our goal is to make sure that they do everything within their power to make sure that if there's people currently in the community that need a job and they have the skill set necessary to perform their duties, that we give them the opportunity and incentivize them. Construction career opportunities. We talked about job fairs, but we've seen this move the needle tremendously. The apprenticeship programs. So we're talking about being able to go in and, presumably the contractor that's going to be hired to build a $71 million project is going to be somebody reputable with lots of experience. Somebody, I believe that it would be a great situation to be able to offer a local business the opportunity to work underneath that organization. Definitely a good thing for people to be able to put on their resumes. Participation in local organizations. We've been meeting with a lot of organizations. I'm going to touch a little bit more on community outreach, but one of the ones that we've met with is the Police Athletic League, and these kids, the things that they're doing in that organization to keep kids off the streets and keep them busy is tremendous, and we look to participate in that. And then local art and history. We understand this is not our community. We are not from this community. We did not grow up here. So it's important to us that we do our best to make sure that we incorporate as much history and as much local art and other things that we can to make sure that we pay tribute to folks that have been here much, much longer than us. And going back on that too, I want to talk a little bit about our community outreach. So our situation is a little bit different. We didn't put this project together and then go and start meeting with residents. So we purchased the property in late May, and our outreach actually started before then. And so we were meeting with a lot of individuals, a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, making sure that we got as much helpful feedback as we can. We were actually polling people at some of these events and getting a lot of feedback so that we could help implement a lot of the feedback within our project. So this actually took place till about September. So we spent months and months and months out there meeting with folks, getting feedback, and then we put our project together. At that time, we started meeting with people again, going out and meeting with individuals, meeting with larger groups, and making sure that everybody has the opportunity to hear about what we're proposing, and that way, hopefully we can, get some additional input from them that can help us craft a project that everybody's proud of. So we talk about our gap funding request. What we're talking about is economic feasibility. Okay, so for instance, if we build our project, our $71 million project, and the value is $60 million at the end, banks will not give us money and investors will not give us money. So it is important to us that if we're going to our lenders or our partners, that we present a project to them that is economically feasible. That is where this gap funding comes into place. And so it is absolutely necessary for this project to work. The other option that we have without gap funding is obviously we can't offer our product at the affordable rents, which we're hoping to do. So it's imperative. Again, 86% of this project is going to be privately funded. So the way we do it, we go out to a traditional bank, we raise traditional equity, and then the gap funding. So that's how we put these together. As Jennifer alluded to, there are not currently state and federal programs that address workforce housing. I think the state issued some sale money that was like $5 million for the entire state, which of course every developer in the state applied for. That does not move the needle at all. There's been talks about the Sadowski Fund and opening that up, but right now there are not current programs out there where you can build this type of housing. You have to go directly and deal with local government, and that's why your role here today is so important. This only gets done on a local level. We talk a little bit about our tax revenue generation. It's significant. So this is an investment. This is not a giveaway. This is a privately funded deals. We are on the tax rolls paying big time taxes. So over a period of time, this investment gets repaid. And so I don't want this to be viewed as a giveaway. This is something that due to what we are going to be creating and the investment that we're going to be taking on is going to be repaid to the city over time. So I think it's really important to also draw a distinction between a lot of developers that come in and say a bunch of things and other developers that actually do it. So I wanted to show you a few projects that we've been successful in doing. All of them are public-private partnerships. All of them have obtained gap funding from the cities or the city agencies, and they've all moved the needle in a very, very big way for these communities. This is a project that we worked on just before the recession in downtown Milwaukee. We actually broke ground in the height of the recession in 2010, which was a very challenging thing to do on a $65 million project. This was an area of town where nobody was making any investment. Nothing was happening. The Bucks had an arena there, but other than for a game, it was basically vacant. We were the first ones to go in and make a major investment. We sat there for a little bit, but shortly thereafter, the Aloft Hotel went in. And then the Bucks got bought out by Fortress, and Fortress pumped about $500 million of investment right around our area. So it was significant. This is another project up in that area where the city was hoping to be able to incentivize jobs. Northwestern Mutual, a very large employer, was looking at locating their headquarters, or not their headquarters, their IT headquarters out in this area. Of course, one of their conditions to doing so was the affordability of nice quality housing. So we went in, we worked with them, and we were able to build this project. So that's the before and that's the after. This is a project on 3rd and 13th in Overtown. Similar deal, it's currently built. We worked with the CRA on a $10 million grant down there, and we're able to offer 90 affordable housing units. There's currently a line around the corner, for these units. The affordability need in that area is significant. This is a project we're especially proud of. It's a project in Fort Lauderdale called the 613. We bought an actually kind of a rundown church. The pastor was looking to retire and sell his property, and we were able to go in and propose a 142 unit workforce housing project. This project is 60% complete. Moss & Associates is our general contractor. We're actually a couple weeks ahead of schedule on this deal. This is an important project because it's in the historic Northwest area in Fort Lauderdale on Sistrunk. If anybody knows Sistrunk, it's been a long time since they've seen significant private investment. We were the first to go in and propose something significant along this corridor, and it's already having its intended effect. There has been tremendous amount of investment further up west on the corridor, and again, this was a partnership with the CRA. We received a $7 million grant on this project. This is another one actually that we're currently underway on in Lake Worth Beach, in between 16th and 17th on Dixie. That Moss is actually out there moving dirt as we speak. So I share this with you to say, you know, I can tell you that we will work tirelessly to make sure that this project happens. So far, we have been successful in doing so. This is what we do, and you know, thank you for your support.
Is that the end of the presentation? Thank you very much. Board members, any questions? Now, I will alert you to the fact that we have several cards, and we are about 23 more minutes before we have to go into the city commission meeting. So chances are we're going to have to reconvene this after the commission meeting. So I'm just telling you now. Anyway, any questions for the presenters? Yes, Commissioner Shove.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there are two aspects of this, and thank you for your presentation. One, which I think is primarily important, which are the social aspects. When I first moved to West Palm Beach, I lived in affordable housing, and coming from Western Pennsylvania, it was not my community. I got adopted into one that already existed and was very thankful for that because it is what kept me here in this city. So I think it's primarily important to have this kind of housing. Second to that is looking at the numbers. So of your 289 units, approximately how many would then be considered workforce housing?
Yeah, so we're required per our restrictive covenant to have 2/3 of those.
Okay, and then that's for how long?
Period of 15 years, and that's from the date of completion. So that'll actually be about 17 years based upon a 2-year construction time frame.
Okay, so it looks like from your calculations in tax, just so that I can summarize, we'll have about 190 units that would be affordable housing for 15 years. Your contribution is $61 million. The ask from the CRA is $9 million. So if we calculate that out according to the taxes that would be back in, although we're making a $9 million investment, which would mean subsidizing about 190 units worth of rent for the next 15 years, within 3 to 5 years, that $9 million would be paid back via taxes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Nearing.
Mayor, and you've already alluded to it, but can I make a suggestion? I really want to hear from the residents, and I wish hindsight is we should have started a lot earlier. But my fear is if the commissioners ask too many questions, residents aren't going to stay here until 8:30, 9 o'clock tonight. Can we go right to, if the commissioners are willing, go right to hearing from the resident, the community, and then we can take it from there?
That's fine. It's a decision of this body, so. All right, that seems to be a consensus. As I mentioned, there's several cards. I'm going to call out 3 names. If you will join the podium on your left, my right, and then I'll call out 3 other names, and if you can start queuing up at the other podium. First 3 names: William Cummings, Brian Boysaw, and Rick McInnes. And then the next 3 names start queuing up at the other podium: Betty Rowlett, Dennis Grady, and David Chandler. Mr. Cummings.
For the record, my name is William Roger Cummings. I'm a property owner in this community and a licensed state of Florida real estate broker. We are referring to Resolution 1948, the grant, as proposed at this meeting tonight by the affiliated development. We are blessed with a good economy and a time of positive growth in our city. The Mayor, Commission, and Community Redevelopment Agency are making excellent, forward-thinking decisions, managing growth and replacing infrastructure where needed. We are a wonderful community made up of many unique and individual neighborhoods. Each of these bring a contribution to the rich culture and synergy needed for a well-balanced modern city. This project focuses on the historic northwest portion of West Palm Beach. This neighborhood is steeped in history and home to some of the longest-term families which establish our foundation. Our leadership has made a firm statement with the acquisition of the Sunset Cocktail Lounge, an iconic venue with an unprecedented music and entertainment pedigree. In addition to the restored Sunset, There will be a modern contiguous structure providing ADA facilities and a commercial kitchen for unique events presented in this one-of-a-kind spot. Land has been acquired for parking and additional structures consisting of repurposed historic properties for appropriate retail and restaurant use. The economic commitment has already created an environment attracting private investors with a long-term plan, to wit, affiliated development. They will add a valuable component, modern residential, appropriately sized retail, and workforce housing. This means more customers, interested residents, and employees at a price they can afford. This location between Banyan and 3rd Street, directly on Rosemary Avenue, is the center of our city. It welcomes citizens and creates a beacon, identifying the prominence of the historic Northwest. I am in favor of this project.
Thank you. Brian Boysaw.
Thank you, Commission. Brian Boysaw. I am located at 501 North Rosemary Avenue. I've been there. This coming April, there'll be 10 years where I've been there. I've invested in the community in terms of my participation, in terms of support for just community activities. I'm objecting to this, the passage of this at this time, primarily upon these grounds. We've sat here and listened for about 45 minutes. The most detail I've heard about this project was today. The initial time when I had an opportunity to speak with the group, and we're dealing with affiliated development, and we're also dealing with Rosemary West Palm Beach LLC. You're ultimately loaning the money to the West Palm Beach LLC. That's not who we technically are hearing from today. The question then becomes, if a company is started in 2019, affiliated development in Rosemary West Palm Beach, what guarantees do we have if we loan them the $1 million? What guarantees do we have if we give them the $14 million? Are these personal guarantees? What's the term sheet? What are the details on the term sheet? What's the developer's agreement? If you all as a board don't know that and haven't seen that, it's irresponsible to pass it right now. Not saying that it can't be passed, but there's a lot more information that needs to be learned. For instance, when this board supported the Aloft project, something as simple as this. My project is on 4th Street, 501 North Rosemary, on the west side of the street. I wanted to, at that time, to get my height increased up to 5 stories. Staff at that point in time said, no, because it's not in character with the remainder of the neighborhood. I'm on Rosemary Frontage. I was only talking about bringing my property, which is on between 4th and 5th, bringing it up to 5 stories so that it be in parity with the Steele property, which sits on the corner of 3rd Street down to 7th. I'm only encroaching into the neighborhood 100 feet. Staff said it wouldn't be in keeping with the character of the community. What staff is asking you to do now is to pass Rosemary Frontage all the way down to Sapodilla, not going up to 5 stories, but go up to 8 stories. Now, what you did not see in that project site, if you look at that map, there are residences right there. And so the issue was, it's not in character to have a 5-story where you got residences right behind you. They have 5 stories right around them now. I just would ask that this board give us enough time to prepare and come back and give you the information that you need that's helpful here and that you're going to need. What are we going to do if we're stuck with this project because something happens? For instance, if they go for this variance, how did they get that variance when staff at the top has said, if you're 1 block away on the west side of the street, you can't go to 5 stories. 1 block down, you can now go to 8 stories. So those things are important because.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boysaw.
Thank you for your time.
Rick McKinnis.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Rick Rekenis, 801 South Olive. Full disclosure, we are the engineers on this project, and one of the advantages that I can tell you that will happen if this project is built is a lot of the utilities that are in the neighborhood will get upgraded and cleaned up, making it easier for future redevelopment. And that's just one of those things underground that nobody ever sees or cares about except for people like me. So, but I have had a chance to get to know the development team over the past number of months. They're very good to work with. We enjoy working with them a lot. And from what I've seen, we are actually also working on some of the projects in Fort Lauderdale for other developers that are now coming into those neighborhoods, following along where these guys started, a few years ago. So, planting the seed and moving forward in a neighborhood where I think the city's been waiting for something to happen for a long time is a good public policy, in my opinion. Thank you very much. I'll keep it short.
Thank you. I'm going to call three other names. If you could start queuing up at the podium on your right, my left: Teresa Johnson, Leah Gaines, and Phyllis Johnson. And now we have Betty Ann Rowlett.
That's correct. 710 51st Street, and I just wanted to say that I approve of this project being passed. I wish that you guys would also approve that, because finding affordable workforce housing here in West Palm Beach is very difficult. I spent 6 months trying to find a residence for myself and my daughter, and it was very difficult trying to compete with the rental rates that is going for Section 8 housing, and I don't have Section 8, can't afford or make too much to afford Section 8 or to get on that list, and I'm currently now paying more than 30% that's recommended for rentals. So this would actually be something that's beneficial to me and my family, so I appreciate it if you would consider approving it.
Great. Dennis Grady.
Good afternoon. Dennis Grady, I'm CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of the Palm Beaches. And our Governmental Affairs Committee received a presentation from the developer last week, and 20 businessmen and women voted unanimously urging the adoption of this project. And after this afternoon's presentation, I can say it should be clearly defined as adoption of staff's recommendation. The need for workforce housing, I think, is abundant and clear to all of us. This is also bringing a much-needed commodity to our community, but placing it in an area that has not benefited from development for decades. And 289 units, 2/3 of which will be workforce, will be a welcome addition, and not only to those who reside in it, but also to the employers of many of those people who will be occupying those places. The Grand is an investment that is somewhat different, as the developer pointed out, than many of those projects that have brought me before you during the past 7 to 10 years. It is a project that will only happen with the leadership and the action of you public officials moving forward. It's not a purely private sector. As the developer pointed out, if your goal in life is just to make as much money as possible in a development, you're going to 100% private sector, chase that project, and make it one that can maximize the return to yourself. This isn't the maximum return of the greatest dollar. There's a profit in this, but rest assured that the profit in other projects in the city, like the Bristol, the outlet malls, et cetera, is much greater and a larger return to those developers. I urge you to take a positive step today for workforce housing and approve your staff recommendations before you. Thank you.
Thank you. David Chandler.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing us to speak. I have to return back to work. In December 25th, 1964, my parents, Charles and Jeanette Chandler, got married at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. 25 years later, after my father retired from the Coast Guard, we bought a house on the corner of 7th and Division. 25 years after my parents bought that house, I have now moved my family and my children into the greater Northwest area. I'm not coming from you from a standpoint of a business owner, but from a long-term resident. As I've lived inside the Northwest, I can tell you one thing has been missing. We've had infrastructure done, we've had jobs come in, but there have never been an investment into the community like this one here today. In order to present a strong economic system into any neighborhood, you must, 1, invest in the people, 2, you must bring in businesses, and 3, you must have infrastructure. We've had infrastructure, I've been there for when they tore up the streets. We've had businesses come in, they come in each and every day, and you guys have incentives for businesses. But there has never been an incentive for residents like this. My wife and myself, we live in the Northwest, but unfortunately, we, because I love the Northwest, are living in substandard housing because that's what's around. This type of project now will make all of the slumlords in the Northwest have to up their game, have to up their ante. Because why would I pay $14.50 to stay in substandard housing when I have an opportunity to take 35% of my rent or what I make and put towards my rent and have what they call world-class housing? I support this because this is an investment that's going to go longer than your dollars could ever imagine. This is an investment in the people. By affiliated saying that they have opportunities to get, may I say, our street pharmaceutical guys off the street corners and pick up shovels and pickaxes and join in the work. Now they are becoming productive citizens inside our community. This is a win-win across the board. I want this for my community, I want this for my kids, and I need this in my community. And not only do I live in the community, but I work in the community, and I see men and women who are struggling every day with rent. This is something for you guys to be excited about, and you should be excited about. But I want to say this to you. Let's not be on the wrong side of history when it comes to this. Let's be progressive, let's move forward, and let's really make West Palm Beach the greatest capital city in not just Palm Beach County, but in the entire state of Florida and to the country. So I urge you to support this as I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Johnson.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Teresa Johnson, Executive Director at the Northwest Community Consortium. I was born in the historic Northwest. I worship in the historic Northwest, and I work in the historic Northwest. The need for workforce and affordable housing in the city of West Palm Beach, specifically the Northwest neighborhood, is clearly needed, no doubt. The city of West Palm Beach has identified built environment as priority number 1 in your 2018 strategic plan, with a directional statement to support the development of affordable and workforce housing. Rosemary West Palm Beach LLC development of a 289-unit multifamily mixed income development in the historic Northwest will certainly help to achieve this high-level policy goal. The impact of such a project has far-reaching economic implications on the community at large. It has the ability to lower the city's poverty rate, which is reported to be 18.9 by welfareinfo.org. It has the ability to create jobs for unskilled, skilled laborers, minority subcontractors, and beyond. Certainly, this project is likely to attract private investment into the community. I am for all of that. However, I ask that you delay the approval of funding for these following reasons. A delay today would allow the community to coalesce and identify the priorities that we desire to be addressed and how, in fact, the community will benefit. NCCI's active engagement in the community, from the Ambassadors Program that involves the American Legion and residents, to NCCI's participation in the Historic Northwest Rising Final Report of June 2017, and substantial participation in the Historic Northwest Final Community Safety Action Plan in May of 2016, rightly positions us to advance this request. What is more, NCCI's facilitation of its health care assessment survey in 2015 in partnership with Palm Care Foundation that revealed barriers to health care were affordability and transportation, with 68% of the respondents reported that substance abuse services were needed in the community, and 88% felt that mental health services were needed. Our participation in Community Foundation's 2018 Participant Perspectives and Community and How to Affect Change that ranked its top 5 priorities as housing, job/economic development, poverty/economic security, crime/public safety, and affordable health care. Our participation in the Mayor's Village Initiative. The plan to reduce
Thank you very
violence.
much. Thank you very much. Commissioners, we're about 4 minutes until, may I suggest that because we also have a similar companion item, number 19, in the City Commission meeting. We'll call up a couple of more cards, but may I suggest that we hopefully encourage people to stay and maybe raise their comments during public comment, which is relatively early in the commission meeting. We'll have it as a matter of record, and we may have to, we will have to obviously have to come back as this body after the commission meeting, but we will at least have been able to hear from the public. Is that okay? Okay, so let's see if we get a couple more in. Leah Gaines.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Commission. Leah Gaines. I agree with the previous speaker. I think the Northwest neighborhood is ready for a redevelopment project. However, I only got a chance to just have a very quick view, very limited view of what the project was about just before the Thanksgiving break. And in the course of my discussions, and I shared it with the development team, they told me they were going to be going before the commission that following Monday, and I was almost like in shock. You postponed it for 2 weeks, and at the last meeting, you actually approved a resolution to bring back to the city Steele and Lee to update your Steele and Lee Northwest plan. And the purpose of that was to actually look at what is the appropriate scale for development in those transition zones. And this, by the way, is not just a transition zone. This hits dead set right into the historic designated area. I think this is going to have an impact on the character of the neighborhood by the location of this site. But first, I want to say the CRA needs to come into compliance with the Florida statute, with your own governance and administration, because everything that you do outside of that statutory authority can be considered questionable, including your allocations of funding and expenditures. This project needs more time for community vetting and community review and public review. The funding of the project, for example, that's a lot of money for one project. Where's it going to come from? If it's coming out of the 2020 budget, that's representative of 35% of that budget. So what projects are you going to cut? Is it going to be the $796,000 from Fantasy Island? Is it going to be Stark's Way, the shotgun houses, $1.8 million? Is it going to be the Bidwell project you have funded for $500,000? If it's coming from your reserves, it represents almost half of your reserves, the total amount. And how is that going to impact your bond rating? There's a lot to be considered here, and we would like you to take more time. Allow Steele and Lee to review the size and scale, to get an update to look at how these projects impact these transition zones and the historic area. The zoning has not even been approved yet. So if that, you can also, I brought this as well. This was a study that you did a couple of years ago. I don't know if any of you've reviewed it, but it was the Reinventing Your City Historic Industrial Chic Northwest Neighborhood. And one of the development scenarios that you proposed was to put multi-family residential on the east side of Rosemary, which currently is now zoned for this project. CRA could swap properties.
Thank you very much.
And accomplish that.
All right.
Thank you.
We will adjourn this meeting. Encourage any of you who've put in a card on this matter that you've not yet had a chance to speak. You can either speak at the commission meeting during public comment, or you can stay until after the commission meeting when we actually debate this matter. We will reconvene as the City Commission at 5:03.